Alright, let's see. Tell me if my audio balance is good, and then we can get started. Actually, what we're going to do to start is turn off the elevator music and watch my video. So, fancy overlays, underlays, there we go. Let's go. Hello, Zetnus here. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the Masters of RMS map pool, with 2 maps from 4 creators and finishing off with a contest winner. We have some amazing maps lined up for you, so let's get right to it.
So the first map I've created for this tournament is called Shoals, and it looks like this. It's 2 islands separated by a strip of shallow terrain. The map layout is fairly open, close to the TC, with standard resources, pretty much. Each player starts with or spawns with 4 golds on the island, and 2 stones, turkeys, and boars. That is pretty much standard res. Then you have these sort of shorefish in the shallow, and the 2 shoals, the group of fish. So we have one here and one there, and this is like the basic concept of the map, testing the fish distribution. So we have fish on the edges here, but it's pretty spread out. So ideally you want to have control at least one of these spots. Yeah, wood lines are pretty small, scattered around, can create some awkward positions around the map, and there is also like small points of elevation spread around. That is it. The other map is called Nexus and looks like this. So player starts opposing from each other with 2 close wood lines, and otherwise, if I recall correctly, standard res. Well, pretty much. In the middle they are connected by this piece of land, but otherwise it's shallow terrain with a bit of water as well. And we had 3 islands spawning, so 1 spawns with stone and 2 with gold, and these can spawn a bit differently depending on the generation. You could have 1 stone in this pond and 2 golds over here, or just like this, stone gold on one side and 1 gold on the other. So players have to scout to see which distribution there is and what pond to prioritize. You also have some fish here, so you will likely dock early to get some extra food income. The wood lines will suffice for like the early game, but later on you probably want to head out to the corners where the main wood axis is. You can't lock it down with the TC that easily though, because you have elevation plus you have this ring of rock terrain. A bit inspired by Land Madness, so it's enough to put a lumber camp, but not the TC. Yeah. So I guess it's Land Madness with Cup combined, I guess.
So Hank also made 2 maps for Masters of RMS. He wanted to make maps that were slightly interesting, but above all had a competitive spirit and wouldn't be too hard to figure out. He suspected that some of the other entries would involve a lot of water, so he decided to make 2 purely land-based maps. For each map, he wanted there to be 1 refreshing map-defining feature and wanted to limit any other changes so that the map would still feel somewhat familiar to standard maps. So the first one is Mud Pools, which is a map that might be compared to ravines. However, it's slightly more open and the elevation is a bit different. The middle of the map features a bog, which acts as an unbuildable but passable area. Some additional hunt and a few shorefish can be found there, but since the area is unbuildable, hunters and fishermen will have to walk quite some distance back to the closest mill. He doesn't think the middle area will significantly decide how the map plays out. More subtle, but arguably more important, is the distribution of elevation on this map. Here he chose to put the players in a depression. These mud pools are completely free of wood, so the closest forest might be a bit further than what you're used to from Arabia. The depression also means that defenders' advantage is removed. The TC is not in range of a mangonel firing downhill. However, the elevation penalty will be noticeable when the besieger sends reinforcements to the battlefront. The map has plenty of forest. 4 clumps of forest will always spawn surrounding the players, as long as the map is played on a 2 to 4 player size. There is plenty of wood to last until Imperial Age, although in a very long game, wood might be the first resource to run out, as additional gold and stone piles are rather abundant. This abundancy of resources, combined with the difficulty to defend the starting TC, might promote spreading out all over the map or going forward to gain map control. Lastly, the map shows some additional small hills which are highlighted on the minimap. Perhaps this will highlight how important map control is. The other map he made, coincidentally, looks very much like the winner of this contest, which we'll be seeing later in the video. Perhaps both were inspired by a video from Mike Hasselbach, aka the Mad Catter, where he showed a map script that generates a Gaia city in the center of the map. Building such a Gaia city is only recently possible due to some new features that were added in DE. It's very challenging to get objects, especially the bridges, to spawn in the correct orientation, but in the end, the result here looks pretty good. On this map called Crusade, the Gaia city in the middle just kind of sits there. There's little interaction, and controlling the area doesn't give many rewards. The monument might switch color, but doesn't trigger a countdown and doesn't trickle any resources. Those features are limited to King of the Hill. However, there are 4 relics surrounding the monument which might make it worth to take control of this area. For anyone wondering, the Gaia buildings cannot be captured. Not even monks with redemption can convert them. However, military units can attack and destroy them if they are specifically ordered to do so. Outside the city, both players spawn with a total of 4 villagers spread around 2 corners of the map. They also have 2 camels to scout with, and will have control of 2 fortified towers. These towers have significant range and damage, but they will not benefit from upgrades researched later in the game. The outside region features hills with decently sized forests in all corners, a small oasis on each of the sides, and the remaining land is deserts. Gold and stone are particularly well spread out on the map, which gives a reason to expand as much as possible in the late game. When playing the map, the initial start proposes a dilemma. Put down the TC right away next to 2 villagers in the corner, or perhaps meet halfway and build the TC with 4 villagers. The oasis might be a good choice as it has additional boars, but the corners have good wood and some hunt as well. Due to the nomad start, the presence of towers, and the possibilities to wall water, a more defensive start, maybe into a fast castle, could be an option. With that, the real battles might begin in the mid to late game, when players contest the relics and the valuable wood and minerals that are spread around the map. Especially wood might become scarce in this semi-arid world. Alright, now let's take a look at Cruzini's 2 maps. First, we'll start with Langanati. I hope I pronounced that right. And you'll notice right off the bat that the center has a lot of fish and shorefish. However, you'll have to be careful because there are also some crocodiles lurking in the center. Later on, there will be 4 relics to fight for. The player start areas are placed on this unbuildable rock terrain, meaning that any farms will not be within the safety of the town center. You'll also notice that each player only starts with 2 small piles of gold. This will necessitate chopping through these wood lines here where the remaining gold lies trapped away. It'll be a race to see who can free their gold first. The outside of the map features a wood line all the way around, along with individual piles of stone and a relic in each corner. The remainder of the map features small rolling hills of elevation, and a few straggler trees. Now let's take a look at Christina's second map, and that will be Rock Slide. Now, Rock Slide is sort of a hideout style map, but it does have a few key differences. First of all, players in their little hideout may start with food and forages and wood, but they don't have any gold or stone here. Furthermore, there's a ring of shallows all the way around the center, which will make it harder to wall to the edge of the map. Players can wall themselves in, but they're locking themselves away from all the gold in the map. You'll also notice that the only stone that's available is hidden in the corners, in the rock slides. This will necessitate chopping through the forest in order to reach any stone. The rest of the map features abundant wood. Alright, and now I get to talk about my own maps. So first of all, let's take a look at Eye. And you'll notice right away that the main feature of this map is that the mini-map looks like a giant eye. That's basically what I designed it for. Now, the main things to fight over are these two lakes, one in the north and one in the south. Each have a modest amount of fish, along with a few shore fish, and a relic on an island to reward those who manage to retain water control in Castle Age. The center of the map features most of the map's gold, along with a little bit closer to the players to fall back to in case the middle is too contested. This ring around the center is unbuildable rock terrain. You'll also notice a few wolves guarding the center. Players start with the standard Gold Rush style resources, a guaranteed woodline in the back, and further woodlines along the sides. Walling is possible, but contesting the remaining map, especially the lakes and later on the center, will be important. Alright, and my other map is called Random River. And basically, for this map, I had a couple other ideas that I all discarded because I wasn't happy with them. So eventually I went for something where the main goal was just for it to be somewhat more random than most maps that we generally see in tournaments these days. There's been a trend towards a lot of maps having relatively fixed positions, very symmetric layouts, and Random River tries to be reasonably fair while having a very randomly shaped river. So the main feature, the defining feature, is in fact this river, which can be positioned in such a way that it can be ignorable. It might be completely separating players, though. You'll just have to scout to figure it out. Now, the river has numerous crossings. It has a very small amount of fish, along with a few shore fish. So losing water control is not necessarily problematic, and even going for fish is not really necessary. The rest of the map features standard resources, along with a few extra neutral piles of gold and stone to encourage expansion in the late game. You'll also notice numerous hills, which are clearly marked by a different colored terrain on the minimap. Each biome variation will have a different color for the hills and for the main land terrain.
Hello guys, and welcome to the map overview of City Ruins. Players start Nomad style with a small encampment in the city outskirts. Luckily, reclaimed buildings such as farmland, mining and lumber camps can be found nearby. Unclaimed farming and mining areas can also be found around the city. Players will have to be careful though, because these resources are spread out thin. A road will lead players through the city's moat to the center, which contains multiple small fish trap lakes, as well as multiple stone and gold mines. Last but not least, a hill holding the map's 5 relics can also be found there. The only buildings players can convert are farms and fish traps. Any other building can be seen as an obstacle ready for demolition. The gates closest to each player and the relic hill are always visible. There are no wolves, but a small handful of weak bandits have made camp in the city center.
Alright, and that covers all the maps in the map pool. You'll be able to find these maps as an official mod, which should already be up at time of recording. Now, if you liked what you saw, I encourage you to sign up and participate in the tournament, or you could donate to the prize pool, or you could just tune into the streams. Also, if you're interested to see the other 17 amazing submissions that we had for the contest, tune into my stream later, where I'll be taking a detailed look at all of them. Thank you for stopping by. Right, and there we go. Let me minimize all this stuff. Get the game open. Yeah. So, well, we can talk about, if you want to want me to look at anything on the maps that we just looked at a bit more, we can do that. Otherwise, what I would do is take a look at our contest submissions. And I think I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up and go through all of them. So I can quickly pull this up again. First, we can take a look at Sundarbans. So I'm going to generate it in the editor. Let's do that. We can also get a bit of music at like a low volume. Let's go like this. Maybe. There we go, something like that. Cool. And we're not going to look at Nothing version 3. SSS. Oh boy, what's it called? That one. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been thinking as well what I can do to change or improve. It really helps to have your map played. So if we take a look here, there are a couple of minor things, like the fact that the straggler trees are snow trees. That's just a bug in the script. Basically a residual thing from the biomes. What a lot of the judges, including me, pointed out, I guess that water is perhaps too dominant here. If you lose control of the water, you've basically lost, because all of your woodlines are rangeable. The resources here in the center are rangeable. I like the fact that the back is open. It's a feature, but it can be unbalanced to the point where a TC could be very vulnerable here. That was a concern that some people voiced, and I agree with that. I think here the main thing holding this map back probably is just the fact that it's not that balanced for competitive. Could also do a bit more mixing with the water and so on. I think personally probably some bigger wood lines in the center. Alright, let's take a look at the next one. We can always go back if we have any specific comments or if anyone asks anything. Happy to answer any questions. So let's pull this up, scroll along. What do we have next on offer? Golden Cross. Alright, let's take a look at Golden Cross. So, Golden, that's the one. So here, the main feature is that all of the map's wood, except your starting wood, is in the center. This is all barren desert, and then there's golden stone in the corners. An issue with this map... Well, okay, so these trees here, these are actually... They're placed as objects, which means that they're straggler trees. This has a few implications. One, they're not shown on the minimap. Two, they can theoretically be lamed. And three, because they're placed after a bunch of other important objects like gold and stone, it often happens that players might not get all of their 3 wood lines. Or other resources might get bugged out. Like here, look. This poor player 1 here has only gotten one of their wood lines. So that could be fixed by... There are ways to place guaranteed wood lines as terrains. Like the DE Arabia is moving in that direction. I did it for some of my maps. Some of the other entries here did it as well. You can also place them as objects, but perhaps place them earlier to make sure that they at least are able to spawn. Other comments that I had, well, the outside is a bit bland. Could have used with maybe some terrain mixing or some, a few straggler trees. Probably a bit of wood, actually, just a few stragglers or something. Gaia cactuses. Because all the intense fighting has to be for the middle. It doesn't matter if you control gold and stone if you don't control wood. Yeah, the concept isn't bad. Actually, I can also use this as an opportunity to point out something else. Let me just pull it up. This was Golden Cross, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Let's pull up Notepad. So, I pointed out a bunch of typos on all of your map scripts, and that's not to be mean or picky. I didn't also go through specifically to find them. I'm just using syntax highlighting, and then it's easy to see, when someone accidentally does land percent or a klooping factor or whatever. I encourage anyone to get. It doesn't have to be for Notepad. Whatever text editor you're doing, we have a couple different things, and it really helps just avoid typos. This applied to half the entries, so always a good idea. Yeah. Let's get rid of that, and let's take a look at our next entry. Alt-tab. There we go. Fishbowl. Ooh, I like this one too. They really need to make the drop-down menu here wider. City, this is the one, isn't it? Yeah. So this is the first in a series of sort of Socotra style or Socotra inspired maps that we got. Here what's done is that the outside is of course unbuildable, while the center is where basically all of the action is going to take place. A couple thoughts I had is, and also others mentioned, maybe something to make the outside more interesting. Of course, since it can't be built on, you have to use gimmicks like second object to actually place objects out there, but you could put some eye candy there. You could also mix some terrains in such a way that it only visually masks but doesn't make it buildable, just to make it more interesting. Also, maybe a bit of terrain mixing in the middle. Yeah, maybe something to make the outside more interesting. I do like the idea, though. And there are a couple different styles that can spawn. I think the desert was the most common one. Yeah. Alright, let's take a look at the next map. And we have harsh country with no screenshot. Let's pull that up. There we go. That looks like a harsh, not a marsh. Right. So this is... I didn't playtest most of the maps. Those that had unusual mechanics, where I felt it might make sense to playtest them, I did. And this was one of those where I did test. And... well, basically the main thing here is you have the wolves with food. It's certainly unique and original. And I've pointed this out before and also in my comments, though. There are a couple issues with that. I mean, I got rushed by 2 wolves before even moving my villagers. That's if the or lions, I guess, but if they were further out, so you could at least build your houses and get loom, that would be better. But as it stands, you're at serious risk of just getting rushed down immediately. And there's the other problem where if predators have food, if a random villager, let's say a lumberjack, you're building a lumber mill, a couple of your villagers kill some lions. Instead of going on to gather wood, they'll gather the food and bring back to their town center. Which is good, you get the food, but it also means that you don't have lumberjacks where you thought you'd have lumberjacks. Or if you send someone to build a forward building and they kill a lion halfway across the map, they will carry that food back to your town center rather than building their forward building. So that's a bit iffy. In the center, we have outlaws plus a bunch of the Gaia impaled corpse. Personally, I find it a bit cluttered. Maybe that's just a taste thing. It is basically, all the golden stone here on the cracked terrain, which is good. The outlaws themselves are really weak. If you've ever actually made any maps with them, they have like 15 HP and barely any attack. But they look cool. Yeah, they're not actually, they're really only for show. They barely do anything. Other than that, I mean, the outside could have maybe used a bit of something to mix up the monotony of all these. Maybe a bit of elevation on the outside or some other terrains mixed in. The concept is amazingly unique. It's just it doesn't work well in practice, I've found. And certainly not when they rush you before you can get loom and build a house. Nah, the outlaws are, they just stand there and lob a few arrows at you. Alright, let's take a look at our next map. What's that going to be? Close quarters, alright. So, that looks like close quarters to me. So this is another one of the Socotra style ones, and actually this one is just, it's actually an edit of Socotra. I can use that actually, so this one and one of the other maps referred to a bunch of the DE generating object stuff. And if you're submitting anything for a tournament, it's probably a good idea to copy in whatever code you're referring to, because if DE were to get an update, your map might break or behave differently, and you don't want that. The map itself, it's actually, it's much better than Socotra, I found, because you have water as well. So you have an extra dimension to deal with, and the baobab trees do a good job. They provide the wood, but they also provide access to the outside. The water could have used some cosmetic mixing here, definitely. And also the center, despite the terrain mixing, looks a bit bland often. Here it looks alright this time, but my suggestion there was perhaps a bit of elevation or something to fight over. By using the Socotra resources, of course, you have everything super close, so you're relatively safe from laming. Could have just used a little bit something more in the middle, I think. What Baobab could use is a mod that makes the tree stumps different. There probably is one already, but it's just the huge stumps are a bit problematic. I mean, these are nice, and overall, the general concept is, provides for more varied gameplay than just a standard Socotra. Let's see, what have we got next? This is Sudan, alright. So that was... No? Where is it? Boy. Ruins, GRD, no. Golden, Marsh. Where is Sudan? Oh, there it is. Blind. There we go. True. Baba tree. Well, I mean, because it's dry there, they grow slowly. Makes sense. So this is based off Arabia, I assume. Though it is modified enough that it looks quite nice and it looks different. Ultimately, though, a lot of the judges, including me, independently said, yeah, it's actually not that different from Arabia. Layout and gameplay wise. It looks very nice, though. I noticed you often start in depressions, sort of in the style of some of the earlier Arabia generations, DE, where the elevation was out of control. Actually, the terrain mixing is really nice. Also with the mossy rocked objects. Yeah, ultimately, I guess this map just wasn't that different from Arabia. In gameplay-wise, also with the small pawns and so on. And the pawns can also be more favorable to a certain player than the other. Like here, this would be a good mill spot, while a red player would have to go much further to get decent fish. Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at the next one. Also, what I should say, I suppose, is that a lot of maps actually got very similar scores, and good work on all of you. It was amazing to get 18 entries. It was great to see so many entries, great to see so many good entries, to see so many people trying it out. That's amazing. That's why I contributed to the prize pool myself. Okay, this is 6,217. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to call it, but call it that. Where is it? There it is. I had some specific gripes with this. I'm not sure if the other judges noticed those things. This is one that I play tested too. I actually beat the AI on it because the AI had such trouble. So the main feature here is that the map space is restricted. This is black terrain. Normally this would be part of the tiny map, but you can't build on it. And you're separated by this layer of Mayan heads, which are also, they have map revealers on them just along the middle, so you just see the border. And layout wise, you've got each player starting here with their forage bushes, a tiny pile of gold, just enough for a drush, and then some buildable shallows, some non-buildable shallows with all the relics in the middle with a bunch of fish. And then you have your main golds are nestled among these individual piles that have, I think, 80 gold, if I remember correctly. And there's stone on these hills on the sides, along with wood. So, okay, and you've got these shorefish here, which are actually, these are the best source of food close by. Now, the main gripe I had with this map is that it's really hard to find building spots. And at first I thought it was just because the gold is here. And what could be done with that is you could consolidate the gold. You could have it be half as dense and have twice as much in each pile. That would already help. Or you could just completely get rid of all these small piles and just have a few more groups. But it's not just that. Let me see if I can demonstrate. There's places where I should be able to place buildings. I can't. And that's because there's moorland terrain, I think. I think that was the cause that I looked at. You can't really see it because it's only individual clumps, but that was really frustrating because it makes it hard to place farms. It makes it hard to place any building that's 4x4. I built my first castle on this terrain because everything else was, yeah. So probably get rid of the moorland terrain. That would already help the map. Yes, I am starting at the bottom. You can always, the VOD will be available afterwards. You can go back and take a look at it. We haven't looked at Golden Shower yet, no. Unless I accidentally skipped it. Which I may have. I'll go back and check that. Anyway, this was a very unique map. Just, it would need some more tweaks in order to be properly playable, I would say. Also, another thing too, this map and possibly one of the others modified your your starting resource stockpile. You can do that. It's just you have to think very carefully about whether you actually want to do that. It does have scattered gold, but this is a different one. I did beat the AI on this. Let's see. All right. Yeah, no, I just wanted to criticize this because of the lack of building space. That if that's fixed, it would actually be a really unique map. Let's take a look at our next entry. So, if we scroll up, did I mix? Let me just check. No, I didn't miss anything yet. All right. Sinharya. That's not the right way to pronounce it. Sinharaya. The issue with this map. Let me pull it up first. There it is. It's a really nice map. Pretty good. The main issue is that it was already submitted to the contest that we had on our Discord 2 years ago. Back then it was for Wolo Kingdoms, but I went back and looked at that map specifically now just to see how different it is. And of course, the terrain mixing is new, but in general the layout is it is the same map, just updated for DE. It is a very nice map, but all of the judges had to hammer it for originality because this contest was about getting new maps. But we can talk about some positive things too, right? You've got these mangrove shallows wood lines along the outside. You have some pretty cool connection tricks to make this sort of mossy road between the players. And the center here, it looks like there must be ice terrain hidden underneath here. I can't see it actually in game, but it must be there because we have this white here. Either that or it's a Ring of Gaia object, but it always looks like that, which is interesting. I'm not sure exactly what's creating that white effect, but it looks cool. Oh boy, yeah, we'll see about the pronunciation on that. This, yeah, I think I tested that. I'm not sure, and if it is, then it shouldn't be the ice terrain. Yeah, I'm not sure why. Maybe it's the Gaia objects after all that are making that effect. Oh, that's just like a relic in the way, yeah. I'm not sure. I just thought it looked cool. And some general feedback that I had was just to, in a 1v1 configuration, maybe make sure each side has the same amount of gold, instead of having some neutral that could be on either side. It is a very nice map, though. Made nicer in DE as well. And, like, probably 6 or 7 of the maps, it has carpets. Alright, let's take a look at our next map. And, that is Apennine. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And after we generate this one, we'll talk about that then. Yeah, so this one actually uses direct placement. And it has a bunch of randomly chosen direct placements. And the main thing is that there's this huge multi-tiered hill in the center. And you've got sort of Scandinavia-style water on the two sides. It also takes pretty long to generate because the actual code is long. And what a couple of people pointed out, what could be addressed, is stuff like this, where it's possible to split the split the water in half by building a dock, so you could have safe fishing in one side, just zone out your enemy's dock on your side. The other thing that might be a bit of a concern is that the elevation is so massively important that if your resources are forward, they can easily be denied, or you're very vulnerable to being attacked downhill, and depending on where your wood and other resources are, that can put you in a bad position. Just depends on the generation. do like the way it looks though, with the tiered mountain here. It also prevents excessive walling. Alright, and before... Well, let me check what the next one is. But... yeah, we're gonna have to go in quickly. Ah, that's true, yeah. Before we can generate our next map here, which is Flanders, I'm gonna have to go into the single player mode and generate a random placement map so that the scenario editor doesn't bug out. So that's just yes, Paradise Island will do. That's just a general thing. If any of you are looking at the maps in the pool or these contest maps, if you generate any of the direct placement maps, some of those are obvious, like Nexus and that those are fixed. But here for Apennine, it's less obvious, but that is also a direct placement map. Then after that, any random placement map that you pull up in the editor will have bug generation, where the players will just be anywhere. So that's just something to watch out for if you're testing the maps in the scenario editor. So we are looking at Flanders next. Fixed then. It was never broken. Oh, that's what you meant. Ah, sorry. Yeah, of course. It is. It will look the same every time. That's why my other map was super random, sort of to compensate for that. Yeah. So of the fixed ones, actually, we can go through. So both of Algeron's maps are fixed. Cruzini's both aren't. Crusade is fixed. Eye is fixed. Apennine is fixed. The unpronounceable one here is fixed. And one more of them, Marsh Madness, is fixed. Yeah. All the rest of them are random placement, or they use the circle, which is also fine. I was looking for Flanders, which has got to be that one. I don't know. So I personally like the blue on the mini-map. I thought that was cool, but it is a bit deceiving because you can't actually dock any of it. These deep parts are real water, the rest is bogland, but because this is non-dockable water, there is no water combat on this map. The players start really close together, and with that there's a bit of issue with laming. You probably, in a situation like this, want Boar especially to be starting closer to the town center or always guaranteed as a back resource. And I also noticed, looking at the script for this map, that it was using the thing with find closest, and the issue with that is that you'll end up with these resources that are at 90 degrees to each other, because that's always the closest to the town center unless there's something in the way. Not necessarily problematic, but just something to keep in mind. And also what... Oh, yeah, carpets. I knew this map had carpets too, yeah. I don't know, I quite like this, but I can see why it would be confusing, especially to know where is buildable and where isn't. Oh, certainly, you can. I did something like that on Eye, where the far stone can spawn on one of the two sides, and there's like just a blank object on the other side at random. What could be improved here as well, possibly, would be to give the same amount of resources in each corner. Because given that you start with no stone here, not that much wood, and only the modest amount of gold, players will definitely need to expand to the sides. So you probably want that to be reasonably fair. Yeah, I like the overall aesthetic. I guess one could also put a bit more eye candy or something in the bog, possibly. I don't know. Carpets. Alright. what have we got next? Flanders. Ah, yes. So we'll take a look at Golden Shower here. And yeah. Golden Cross. There we go. So it was advertised as being sort of a gold rush map crossed with various other things. I personally don't feel that when gold is scattered like this, there's no gold to be rushing for. There is gold everywhere, of course. So the thing here is there's a bunch of single tile golds all over the map. So you'll definitely need to expand to those. This author also did a couple different terrain biome variations, which I always appreciate. The minimap looks cool, but also it is a bit messy with this very ragged clumps of dirt on the inside. Overall, it's decent gameplay though, yeah. Don't remember any specific criticisms I had here. Mostly the name. I think it was intentional, but if it's in general, and I know in this case it was sort of intentional to do this, but you can always Google what you're going to do. You can check if there's a map already with that name, and you might also realize that your map means something else. Yeah. It's a nice map, though. Also with the different biomes. Let's see what we have next. And at this point, this was 23, so this one also scored 23 points. That was Rainfall Valley, which we saw on stream. So let's take a look at that again. There we go. So basically here the players start in their area with a small amount of wood, and I feel like maybe that's just because I'm not playing with small trees, but I feel like on stream these were not as dense, while here they've been filled in to be fully dense. I feel like that on stream it looked different, but maybe that's just an effect of using small trees. So overall, yeah, you've got to contest the wood in the center here, potentially the lake in the center, and then the sides, which can be squeezed and have different shapes, sometimes potentially unfair, but these would be areas to expand to, which have some nice terrains here mixed in, although you could have added a bit of something else there, maybe dead trees or cactus or something. But overall, a very nice map. I like the overall layout. I also like that it was a bit random and wasn't too fixed in its layout. But that, of course, means that sometimes you can end up with things that favor one player or the other. I also had one generation where the player had a wood line that went halfway across the map, separating them from the center, so that's the price of randomness. Oh, and with filling the trees, actually, some advice there. What you can do, I think one of the judges noted that certain trees weren't filled when they were close to like a gold or something, because that was interfering. What you can do is you can fill the trees as the very first thing you do, rather than as the very last thing you do. And that way you're guaranteed to fill all the wood lines. You can also fill them with a different kind of tree. I've done that with like reed trees, for example. That can be a nice effect. Oh, there's an interesting generation. Basically bypass the center. I don't think I had any other criticism here. And the maps are getting better and better, of course, as we move up the score ladder, so to speak. What have we got next? Al-Kharid, which I did get the RuneScape reference here. It's just I didn't feel the need to comment on it. There we go. So this one feels more like a classic AOC map, I guess because it doesn't have any terrain mixing and it's only using the AOC terrains. It is, from the layout, though, reasonably competitive. Could be improved perhaps with circle placement so you don't end up with situations where one player is much closer, say, to the fish than the other player. But in general, it's pretty balanced. Sort of like Gold Rush, but not really, because the central gold is so spread out that you can't easily control it with just a few castles. There's also a bit of hunt here, no fish in the center, and you can't dock this either because it's deep water. So there'll be a lot of action on the outside where you've got a bit of elevation in the trees, and you can't wall to the very edge of the map because of the shallows terrain. I don't know. This one this just felt like a relatively solid map. Balance could be improved a little bit, but actually it's pretty good. One other thing, perhaps, if you have places like this that players might want to go to consider whether or not you want predators close by. They were specifically removed from Cross and Four Lakes for that reason, so that early docking wouldn't be endangered. Alright, what have we got next? Orchards. This was a nice one too. Alright. Which one? There we go. So the thing here is that there are these orchards, basically surrounded by a thin tree line and then a bunch of forage bushes inside. And these bushes can either be berry bushes or fruit bushes. That doesn't matter. That's just cosmetic. But the other thing that this map features is that the starting food varies. In this case, for example, you've got sheep here and a boar, but it can spawn various random variations of what types of food there are. So overall, I found this map quite nice visually, and also relatively unique. I don't think this type of thing has been done. Oh, something else I guess I could mention just randomly because I thought of it. The contest description did say that if sheep spawned close to the town center, you're supposed to have one of them be in control of the player. Some of the maps did that, some of them didn't. But that's just a general reminder. Make sure to read whatever stipulations there are. Back to Orchards itself. It's a nice map, possibly a bit wallable and possibly a bit tricky to use with the forages here where there might not be space for a mill, or once you break in, it's super protected with a natural wood line. But then again, I don't think that's that problematic for these smaller ones because they can be easily ranged. For the corner ones, maybe. Capture the relic. Yeah, it could be interesting. Also, one thing I suggested, I don't know if it's like this path here, it's really cool how, you know, the gap between the player lands has been used as a path. What you could do though is use rock terrain if you wanted to make it unbuildable. That would just reduce the walling potential a little bit. I don't know if that's necessary. It was just an idea that I threw out there. Also, this map did actually get the highest score for visual appeal. On the other hand, visual appeal was only graded out of 5, and a lot of maps scored highly. But this one is certainly a very nice map. Civwin, I don't know, because you have to chop through first. You do have your potentially you start with berries outside. You're not guaranteed to, but you have to chop through first and then get set up inside. Could be an issue. I mean, there are so many forage bushes that you could rely on it for quite a while. This goes back to a discussion I was having with Crisini about various bonuses for different civs. You know, is a map with too much wood then Celt's OP? No. It depends. I think the gather rate for forages isn't that great overall anyway. Shorefish actually gather very fast. That's why the Indians are always an issue. Alright, let's see what we have next. If we keep scrolling upwards. Alright, let me perfectly pronounce this. Fimfjordhals. Pretty good, probably. This is also a fixed position map, or direct placement. Also, if this crashes, it might be because it has excessive numbers of accents in the map name. Carpets galore. And you have back resources, back boars to prevent laming. But this is also one of those sort of that went for... Yeah. Eyjafjallajökull was that volcano that exploded 2012, was it? God, that's long ago. Here, I noted this, a couple other judges noted this too. Maybe a dirt terrain on the outside, or some other terrain here just to increase the contrast on the mini-map. Looks nicer for viewers. You can see the clear line where the ice is, but just something under the mountains that looks different. This is just cosmetic. I don't know how well this would play out in practice because a lot of the resources are in the center and the amount of space is actually very cramped. You can't fully wall it though. It's a really nice map overall. The concept is nice and unique. It's sort of a squished Socotra or elongated Socotra, I guess. Dirt 3, layered with snow. I mean, I guess you can see it peek through, but yeah, something like that could work. Yeah. Oh, and you have this... I read that you tried to chop your way through with the onagers. I did not try that. Yeah, I think there were a few bugs here which might be responsible for this here not being perfectly shaped. Just a typo with one of the land attributes. I noted it down. A lot of maps don't, like, direct placement maps just won't work in team games, or they will, but only players 1 and 2 will actually be positioned and the rest will just be tossed randomly onto the map, or will be defeated immediately. Like, I is only 1v1. This is probably only 1v1. I think Apennine, I assume is made for all sizes. I could check the script, I'm pretty sure it is. And what other... I think Algeron's maps probably don't work for for more than 2 players either. Crisini's theoretically do. I saw that. But fixed position maps can, direct placement you can have it work for teams, but you'd have to account for it, which is a lot of work. Let's see what we have next. We have watering hole. All right. Yes. So about that, right, I showed it earlier on stream, you'll see it if you look at the rec. Basically, if you just have a syntax highlighter, this stuff pops out. I didn't go and check line by line. I just went through, and anything that was not highlighted in any way must have been misspelled. Like that. Yeah, coupling factor, parascent chance. Classic mistakes to make. I thought may as well. You know, I want you all to improve. So if I find something, I'll point it out. So this is Watering Hole. Really nice map overall. You know, a modest amount of eye candy, like it should be, not where it's interfering with gameplay or distracting from gameplay, but looking very nice. Yeah, you gotta go for the middle at first, given that there's a lot of food here with the fish, the hunt, watch for the predators, and later on the outside, of course, becomes important because of the gold here. This map also went for filling the acacia trees, it looks like to me. Yeah. Actually, I can... Wait, I'll show you just for a second. If I still have it open. If I just go like this, right? Anything that's wrong just easily stands out by scrolling through. So it wasn't too much effort to find things that were minor typos. Correct, which means actually this is bugging out. So let's see. So these players are not right. So let's do this properly. Yeah, you're right. Thanks for reminding me. There we go, and we're back. Just to make sure that the random placement works properly. There we go, Watering Hole. This was one of the maps that did actually go for the guaranteed woodlines as well. With three ones here. Hank did notice some issues with the gold not always spawning, and that's because it was using just a standard thing where it stays a certain number of tiles away from players. However, that has always been bugged, and it will also stay away from neutral lands, and the center here is made of neutral lands, plus the corners have neutral lands. So resources will also avoid those if they're told to stay away from players. That had been fixed in DE, and then was unfixed in DE again. So it's once again something to watch for if you have a lot of neutral lands. Actually, in both of my maps, I used some actor area shenanigans to get around that, where I had objects staying away from actor areas that were centered on the players rather than staying away from the players themselves. If anyone's interested, I can help out with that. Hopefully DE will go back to having min distance to players only be the distance to players, though, and not to neutral lands. That will be good. Nice map, though. Very nice map. So, what have we got next? Must be nearing the top. Yep, we're getting into the top 3. Alright, so Marsh Madness, which we saw on stream as well. This is the final fixed position map. Or, well, direct placement. It's not fixed. This one, like Apennine, actually has a bunch of different generations it can pick. Marsh... Well, we have 2 versions here. Marsh Madness version 1. Marsh Madness version 2. Well, let's take version 2. Don't crash. Oh, right, this one takes a long time to generate. Well, okay, this is an excellent one for highlighting some of the issues with the map. Usually, I found most of the generations were considerably more fair than this, but look at these woodlines. This might also be a place to try out guaranteed woodlines, maybe. Although, would be tricky, you can't do it the same way it's done on land maps. Overall, I really love the terrain mixing, though, on this map. Blending different things, blending here, blending in the shallows. That was absolutely beautiful. Let's get a less unbalanced one. Should I not be using version 2? Ah, that's more fair. That might be something to look into, because those first 2 generations were iffy. It's not a huge amount of work to create. Well, I don't know how it would work on a water map, though. You could still do it. I can actually just... You only need 2 placeholder terrains to generate a bunch of guaranteed woodlines. You put in the first placeholder terrain, replace that with forest, and then you use the second one to mask the remaining terrain. It's doable. It doesn't even take up that much space. Yeah, and it does generate slowly, but it's still fine. It is nice that you have a bunch of different configurations. A general comment I had too was that sometimes players were pretty far away from any gold at all to start out with. I know some other people mentioned that perhaps some straggler trees or something around the map could be a thing. Although scattered food everywhere is good, with some shorefish but not too many. Well, this was actually I think my top rated map, because, well, I fell in love with the terrain mixing, and I also had a lot of fair generations when I was looking at it. I think we were just pretty unlucky right there now at the beginning. Well, yeah, because there's nothing close to you. You do have to move around quite a bit. So, let's move on. Wait, are we already? Ah, yes, we are. We are at our winning map here for City Ruins. Which, to do this properly... Let's... Wait, give me a second. Hide that. It should be listed in the contest ones as well, although we may as well. We could just use the version that's in the map pack. It's the same thing, yeah. How long? It honestly depends. I don't know. Some of the scripters in chat can say how long they usually take. If I were under time pressure, I could make a map in half an hour, but it's more like a few hours, really, because you want to test, you want to get your wood lines looking good. You just keep tweaking it until it's good. I can make a forest nothing map in 5 minutes, but that's super easy. but a few hours is probably realistic. Well, if it's a really complex map, or if you're new to map scripting, it could easily take days. But it doesn't need to take that long. It just matters. It just depends on what exactly you're doing, how complex you're making it. Yeah, it can definitely vary. You can sink a lot of time into a map. I usually end up sinking a lot of time if I'm changing different seasons, making sure that those look nice after I've got the base script done. Once you have stuff that you can copy over, once you have other scripts, you can just copy over stuff that's the same. Take your objects generation. It's not hard. Go join our Discord. It's just a text file with some instructions in it. So this is the winning map. We did already feature it in the video at the beginning. And there's of course the coincidence that we have two maps in our pool that went for the same central Gaia city type of thing. But of course that's because making unconvertible Gaia objects is a new thing. That was definitely an appealing theme to try out. On the first version, and actually it looks like still on this version, I do have some criticism. Stuff like this, maybe not ideal. And I had some issues too where like gold mines were being on farm tiles. I think that has been fixed though. Yep, the Mad Catter, Mike Hasselbach, he has like, wow, it's gotta be like 10 videos by now going through random app scripting. And then we have a couple guides on our Discord that you could take a look at. What you can try is you can take an existing map. The DE maps are all a bit complicated, but like the old AOC maps, those are relatively simple, and just try to modify that to your needs. I don't know, this was a really nice map. Or at least a very unique map, and the thought that went into providing different gameplay opportunities and so on. I think stuff like this could still be improved, but overall definitely a very cool map. We sort of have to work through things step by step. If you change terrain from dirt to grass, or the other way, and your forests disappear, it's because the forests are being placed specifically on dirt, and if there's no dirt to place the forests on, then they can't place. But if you change the forest to place on grass, then they'll place again. Any other maps that you'd like me to show? I think we've gone through all of them, but I can do whatever at this point. We can just chat, or we can call it a stream. Actually, what I can do is I can pull up the random placement ones that we have here. Not those. Let's pull up Cruzini's maps. This is what I mean by this is a relatively static map, even though it is random placement, or I think it's probably using circle placement. It still looks very similar every time. Layout. Actually, why are the players always in those positions? Okay, that was just chance. Alright, we'll take a look at that in a moment. Yeah, we can look at random river. I can explain how I made it. It's sort of the same idea if you've looked at the Dire Straits, except this one is just relying on it happening randomly rather than being fair. What I did is I placed these 5 lakes, which you can usually identify as distinct maps, as distinct terrains. And then I did some connection gimmicks, where there's a special trick with connections where they can't pass through a terrain that has a cost of 0 to pass through. So the player lands, the player starting areas have this cost of 0. So the connections are only made between these 5 lands. And additionally, I also placed terrain on the hills and said that that terrain also cannot be passed through because it also has a cost of 0, which gives you sort of these natural shapes flowing around elevated areas. And for the crossings, and the whole crossing is initially shallow, but the areas that used to have forest on them become areas that are cut out and are water again, which sort of gives the illusion of partial crossings. And then for the guaranteed wood lines, that's basically a bunch of placeholder magic, where you have, in order to prevent them from clumping, you've placed each one separately first as a placeholder and then put the forest on it. And that way, there'll always be some starting wood on your island. Yeah, it might not be the most fair map, and it's probably, seeing how I played out, this is probably too campy as well. Because once again, yeah, no, it is relatively easily wallable because there's more wood than standard Arabia. But it definitely requires scouting to figure out what you're faced with. Yeah. On larger sizes, I add a few more lakes. So this one does scale up, unlike some of the other maps. Perhaps need to add even more lakes, but you sort of do have it meandering around various hills and staying in the valleys, which gives a nice cool effect. And you can have it all tightly clustered. All of these lands are basically random as where they can spawn. I'm relying on random generator to do exciting things with it. They just have to stay a little bit away from anything that's existing. So you can get some really wacky layouts. Yeah, exactly. And it was actually a concept I had earlier, but I couldn't get it to work because you can't have one connection replace an area created by a previous connection. So you can't have like a shallow going through water that's connecting these lakes, because all the connections are sort of based on what the terrain was before any connections were made. So I'm really glad I got this to work with the gimmicks that it was. Alright, let's go back to oh yeah, definitely. Anything else you guys want to see or talk about? There are a couple of really cool terrains actually that DE added, like these mud terrains, the additional underbrush terrains, and all these different gravel terrains. So definitely use those in your maps. My top 5 maps. Oh, I don't remember. I mean, basically, I I scored each one on each category and then saw what came out. I had Marsh Madness was number 1. And I believe possibly Watering Hole was number 2. Beyond that, I'm not sure. I had quite a few that scored very close to each other. Guaranteed woodlines with the large base sizes. Yeah, the guaranteed woodlines trick from Arabia works if you have a land map and a modestly sized base area on which you want only those 3 woodlines and the rest of the woodlines can be elsewhere, for example. Actually, what you want to do is have the base be the same number of tiles on larger maps, and the woodlines be tile-based as well and not percentage-based. I can show that, actually. So we'd be looking at... Yeah, basically you can set a certain number of tiles, like 3 150 tile clumps, I think is what I did here for the woodlines, or maybe it's each one is 50, I'm not sure. And I did it potentially for all 8 players if you have 8 players. But it works only because the base size is a fixed size. 911 tiles here. But that was I had it as like 15%, so I calculated exactly how many tiles that is on a tiny map and just relied on that to work on bigger sizes as well. It's neat when you can get it to work. You can also use that to keep elevation away from player lands and have bigger elevation further away. Alright, let's see, what else? Is it possible to put a Feitoria in the middle of the map and make it change colors like wonders? Well, what you can do, no to that, but you can put a monument in the center. And then even if it's not King of the Hill, that monument, and then you can... There's a special object, it has an ID 1613, I think. You have to check, but if it's an invisible object, if you give that to each player, and there's a monument on the map, then they will get resources if they control a monument. So that is already doable. Not with a Feitoria specifically, but with monuments. You can also have multiple monuments. And yeah, in user patch, you can do that for various other types of buildings too. Well, you can do all kind. You can just change the properties of objects and buildings to do whatever you need in user patch, which is awesome, but it's also not possible in DE yet. Here we saw a rock slide. So one thing you'll notice here is Trizina used these rocks possibly, and I didn't check the code, of course, because I wasn't judging this map, but that might be to keep stuff from getting trapped in the forest, because the bush forest is not 100% dense. That would be a nice thing if they added it to DE, if you could put the monument wherever you want. Currently, I think it even crashes if you try to place a monument for King of the Hill. Either that or it just doesn't work, but I think it might actually crash if you place one on King of the Hill. You could do that though there are ways to do that with user patch. What else? I know what, let's look at some more fixed position ones. Yeah. You're right, actually, about avoid forest zone. Totally true. I guess. Yep. That wouldn't be necessary. Ooh, one of the maps, I don't recall which it was. Let me quickly go back. I had some other comment to make. I think... Yeah, I'll just go here, even though I've now... This one here is using the standard AOC fish distribution. What you'll want to do, probably if your map has fish and you want it to be balanced, is you just place an excess, but tell them all to have a temporary distance to each other, and a min distance to any other fish as well. And then you get those perfectly spaced fish that you see on modern maps. All of the old AOC maps had fish that looked like this. That's just something I remembered. Yeah, rock slide was interesting. What was I looking at? Yeah, shoals. So yeah, this is the one map with most water on it that will be in the pool. Which always generates in this specific fixed layout. So yeah, if you want an example of what would happen if we did this with more players, it's probably not going to work. Yeah, don't do that. And basically only these two players are even able to spawn because the other players don't have a land assigned to them. Now you can make it support all types of configurations. Like if we did 4 players, I bet you Marsh Madness supports 4 players. If it manages to generate in a reasonable amount of time. Well, prove me wrong, it doesn't. Alright, I bet you Apennine supports 4 players. There we go. It requires a lot of manual work to support different amounts of players on a direct placement map. You can also just say, all right, if it's not even teams, just do random placement. That may or may not work, depending on the map in question. Actually, well, let's have some more fun. Let's see what happens if I were to do this on like this should also fail. Oh, I also generates really slowly because of the connection stuff that's going on there to make the connections only pass through these central areas. For some reason, that really slows down the algorithm. But yeah, you only get the 2 players spawn. You do get a bigger map, so you could play a 1v1 on a larger map. That would still work, but the extra players don't spawn. Ah, those are connections. Those are a bunch of connections going to each one of the lands in the center. So I used the Madland stuff to generate a whole bunch of lands here to make the ring, but also this thing in the middle is a bunch of lands. And these lines are connections that all with equal cost go out to all of these ones in the center. Yeah. Yeah, the problem is players are really far away because they're in the corners. So it's always easy to play defensive. I could put the resources forward. Currently I have, I think, 1 stone and gold are guaranteed to be on this back terrain. The others can be on the front or back. The forage is guaranteed forward. The deer are guaranteed forward. But I put these back so they don't get lamed. No, this was all for the mini map. Speaking of gorgeous, this is very impressive. Especially, actually, getting the bridges in the proper orientation. I don't know how much time you put into that. Yep. No, you're right. So I think we have some amazing maps here. You can find all the contest maps and all of the pool maps as 2 mods. I think T-West uploaded those. You should be able to find them to search for Masters of RMS. And I'm sure any of the creators would love more feedback as well. Or would love to see their maps played. It's always nice to see your own maps played. That's really the only way to see what you can improve. This is cool. I did something like this back before, heck, even before UP, and that was, couldn't of course be nearly this good. But trying to make a Gaia city, it's a lot of work. Yeah. Anything else you guys want to see or talk about? Well, for all the maps to have a show match would require either some players interested in playing them all, or enough prize pool money to interest players into playing them all. Would be cool, though. Interesting that no one made water maps. Yeah. There were a lot of... actually, not even that many, now that I think about it. I mean, okay. We went for a lot of hybrid maps, but for the contest maps... a lot of land maps. But, yeah. How to create a triangle. I wanted to make an hourglass map. That was before I did Random River. I was looking into making an hourglass shaped map. And the trick I was trying to do didn't work. And then I said, what if I try some of my other ideas that I have kicking around? You can create it, so DE lifted the limit on commands in each section. It used to be you could only have 99 lands, 99 objects, 99 terrain commands, but now you can make a huge number. Ooh, yes, the magic clumping factor trick. Where's my harmonic clumping map? somewhere here. This was going to be a map as well, but then I ditched it. But you can just create a bunch of lands in the shape that you want these days. Where? All right, give me a second while I move some files around. Random map dump. There we go. Let's copy that one over. Actually, no, I don't need that. Scroll all the way down. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. There's some fun stuff you can do with this very weird clumping factor. No, it's not. It's a single land in the corner with a clumping factor of, I don't know, several 100,000, and it's a very specific value where it prefers to clump by always moving up one and then right one. So just it or down. It prefers to move in a diagonal instead of actually making a clump. So there's a single land at either the top or the bottom, and it makes just a perfect line. I think it's optimized for 3-player size. Yeah. So it is possible to make triangle-shaped things, and then you can use the old elevation bias. By chance, you can check in the Discord. I was reporting something or another on trying to find the maximum clumping factor, and it was just behavior that looked weird, and we kept refining it until we got to like a perfect value that would make lines run north or south. There might be it's some sort of algorithmic number that causes it to clump in an unusual way, but it was chance that we found that. Yeah, and here it's the same thing. It's just slightly thicker, but it's running perfectly along. You have to optimize the number of tiles so that for the map size, otherwise it'll leak out to the side. But it's a single land. King Deer. I do not have King Deer. Let me quickly go back out again. Actually, thanks to the link. Let's take a look. Alright, that is pretty cool. Those lines, oh, those are connections. Those are connections. I can also show you. I mean, there are a couple ways you can make triangles. Let me get rid of this. Get this back. What do I have on offer? Nothing version 3, no. Right. This is what I was... This is just the old elevation bias. You can use that to make a triangle-ish. It's not perfect, though. You have a bit leaking along the top. Or if you don't have it leaking along the top, then it's not enough to make a solid base at the bottom. But that's one other way to get a triangle. Oh, don't I have some more things here? This... what I just showed, no, you can't. Because it's using the fact that elevation was biased towards the bottom of the map. You could do it differently, trying to run a connection across the map from one corner to the other or something. So this is well, the precursor to Dyer's Straits, which is using direct placement to achieve the same type of thing that I did with Random River, right? Oh, this came first as well. Issue here was almost the runtime on the map. It's a bunch of pre-computed, interesting, fair layouts. So that's a cool map if you want to check it out as well. It's using a similar type of idea, except all of it is directly placed, and they're just, I don't know, hundreds, possibly even like 1,000 different options. And yes, it does have very nice mixing. Like, I generally like terrain mixing. Sad visual appeal was only worth 5 points. I rated a lot of maps highly on that. And you should definitely do it too, because there's a lot... If you don't want to change the properties of your map, you can have a terrain just masked where it only visually contributes to the appearance but doesn't change the properties. What other tricks can I show you guys? Do I have anything on nothing? Let's check. No, I'm just testing silliness here. Yeah, no. This is second object. You can place a second object on some other object. Always useful. Well, forest mixing with the terrain masking... You can. The objects will come from the terrain that provides the properties, but you can use that to... That I'll show you, yeah. Definitely. So, let's pull up... There we go, that'll do. Actually, we can just pull up. Yeah, so once I figured out that you could actually make really nice forests just by placing a huge number of clumps, like, 9,000 clumps with a very small percent. The villagers on farms, absolutely. That's what Empire Wars does with second object. So you can do some nice stuff with forest mixing. Once I figured it out, I used it in all of my maps, basically. You just replace some of the forest trees in the forest. You just replace some of the terrain with other forest terrains, and you get sort of a nice, varied forest. Makes the bamboo even look alright when it's mixed with other things. That is true. Yeah. Before DE, you had to place, if you were placing on a specific terrain, you had to place on that terrain, and if you did a bunch of terrain mixing, that restricted where you could place things. But in DE, you can use the layering, and you're not actually restricting anything. If you put the rocks under there, they wouldn't be unbuildable. What he did there must have been, and he can answer that, of course, himself, but must actually be stuff with second object and actually straggler trees, but since it's unbuildable, they can't be lamed anyway, because you can't put palisades on unbuildable terrain. And yeah, this is hyper random. My pride and joy. You can generate all kinds of interesting and varied layouts. Oh yeah, definitely. I was really impressed by the terrain mixing on that map. You can also mix water terrains, actually. I did a bit of that. Just full water terrains. There's a brown water and a green water, but you can also mix land terrains with water if you want. There might be some cases where that looks cool. Ooh, custom beaches. That's another trick. I have a guide on that. I can just link that at some point. But what you can do with the connection generation is you can make a huge connection that replaces with a width of, say, 999. Actually, 480 is probably big enough to cover any map. And you just replace a specific beach type with another beach type, and don't replace anything else. And it will. That's a nice and easy way to get custom beaches on a map. What else can I pull out? Plate Teutonics. Oh, that was a map that I was considering making as one of the maps, so I didn't in the end. Would have been another fixed position one. Yeah, it's amazing what the game can spit out if you just let it generate maps randomly. Islands. Do I have anything interesting to say? Let's not show capture the relic. Graph connections example. This was when we were experimenting with connections. And big shout out here for all the work that went into this. This was using the same connection tricks that I used in my maps now, but that was using them to make sort of a black forest type thing where all the land's only connected to the center. And there are actual terrains that... This is also a sad thing too, is you can't mod all the custom terrains and actually use them in maps because some of them share the same files. Do I have anything else that's interesting? Yeah, this was the final result of this. We have a bunch of cool maps. Anything else that we want to do? don't know, I find mixed forests look really nice when you have a large forest. Reads nothing. I mean, if you don't use small trees, it would definitely be. Let me show you something. So I did update ring nothing after the stream, so I did put in reads. Of course, it doesn't. You know, you don't want to play with 2 people. Oh, this minimap is crazy. Oh, that's sickening. Reeds only have 50 wood. So they're a nice filler. You can use them as a filler for baobab trees, for example. To nice effect. You could also make a nothing map out of them. It's because the game didn't know which thing to render, which resource. I guess which one it renders depends on what's close to you. So as people chopped through the things close to them, that affected what was being rendered further away. Because there aren't enough pixels on the mini-map to properly represent all the resources that are on the actual map. Reeds are new. So what we can do, let's get a blank map. Not beach, we can get a grass one will do. There are a whole bunch of new terrains actually. These non-navigable, these are basically beach terrain in name only. They're the appearance of beach, but they're normal terrains. These are new, the fact that you have these navigable ones. And all of these are buildable too. That's all new. Those, the beach wet, that's just the beach version of that. The actual beach version for all of those. These are all new. Those white beaches, those were in Rise of the Rajas already. The black terrain is not new, that was already there. Desert Cert, those are all Savannah, Farm. The autumn trees are all new. The general autumn forest as well. The bush forest is new. The dead forest is new. It's just using a mixture of dead trees and snow bushes. The Mediterranean forest is new. The oak bush forest is new. It's using an old ID, but it's using the old duplicated oak forest and it's added bushes into it. That used to be identical to forest, now it's not. And then we've got the reeds. Yeah, I mean, I place the dirt, the dead trees on desert maps as stragglers, but as a forest, of course, that looks too wintry to do. Reeds, you have the standard reed forest, and then you also have a version that comes with beach underneath it, so you can place that on beaches as a custom beach type, for example. Actually, I don't know if you can do that. I think maybe you just place the reed objects on beaches. But you can also make it with shallows underneath. You can in UP, you cannot in DE currently. You can change it for individual trees, but not for forests. Yet. We may still get that functionality if we're lucky. I feel like one of these grass jungles is new. Also, don't use the useless plants remover because then you won't see any of these nice useless plants. Snow, oh, the light and strong snow. So these just look like normal snow. Unless you use layering, then you see the light one layers less. Strong snow layers more. Standard snow layers a standard amount. And then make sure to turn off layering. Otherwise, trees won't generate at all in your map. The dry grass. Oh, it might be. Actually, let me check. Grass dry. Wasn't... Ooh. That one might be new. Or it might be an African Kingdoms one. I'd have to check my spreadsheet. Alright, it is new. Fair enough, I did not remember that. There's Bogland, which that's an unbuildable terrain. If you're looking for unbuildable ones, you have that, you have quicksand, and the rock terrain. And ice. Underbrush is just leaves, but it's been renamed. Underbrush jungle, though, is new. Underbrush leaves is also new. It looks a bit different. Underbrush snow is new as well. Yes. And then we have the brown water. This is new. And we have the... No, that's not new. Green water is new. There we go. So those are the new terrains. Of course, the fact that you can do layering just not infinitely, but vastly increases what you can do with the terrains, because you can layer your 2 layering modes. So each terrain essentially can be 3 different terrains, and then you can multiply that with whatever you're layering with, which gives a lot of unique options. Ooh, one more thing I randomly thought about. Show you guys another trick while you're still here. If you want to make an unlameable straggler tree, for example, because you've given it a large amount of extra wood, you can place it with a second object, or place another object with second object on top of it, just something solid that can't be built on. The haystack looks really good there, because then when the tree's gone, you sort of have the stump leading onto the haystack, and then that stump can't be lamed or accidentally deleted. There was one map, 6000, that was the one, yeah, that featured a straggler tree with 30k. Oh boy, what did I do here? Oh right, it uses random placement, so this is total. Well, theoretically it features a super high wood straggler tree, but I'd have to go fix random placement for it to actually work. Yeah. But what you want, if you have a tree that's that important, you need to do something to make sure it can't accidentally be deleted or lamed. I really wish we could do custom icons here, because this is not great. It does, yeah. So like this tree here is massively important, but you can just accidentally delete it. If... And there, 32k wood gone, so you don't want to allow that. There we go. Yeah, laming is silly overall. It shouldn't be possible, I find.
준비.
But
이동. 실시. 예, 그러죠. 예, 이동.
it's alright. You've got that. You chop it. Then you're left with a nice stump that looks particularly good on the haystack. And you also can't accidentally place anything on it.
준비. 나무꾼.
So that's just another little trick. What? If 3 villagers are tasked on a straggler, it is not lameable. That map that I just showed, 32k or 30k plus 800. It's also possible, I'm not sure if DE has raised that limit as well. I don't think so. I think that's still there. 3 villagers tasked to a straggler, but it's not lameable. I don't think that's true. We can test that. Pull up any old map. Just get ourselves some extra villagers. Alright, so we have like 1 million villagers on that, and I have no wood. So this is not a good test. Give me some wood. Alright, that should be enough for a palisade. Looks pretty lameable to me. Yeah. Myth is proved false. There's actually, okay, so I can tell you guys another cool trick, for those of you that don't know it. Straggler trees, there's nothing special about them that makes them stragglers, except the fact that they're not on forest terrain. So if you place straggler trees on a not 100% dense... Oh, you mean other players? We can test, someone else can test that at some point, not me. If you place forest trees, I need the right type of forest for this to be good. You can fill in the gaps of like a baobab forest with tree objects, like reed trees, oak trees, whatever, and those will not be stragglers. They will be forest trees because they're on forest terrain. That's a cool trick. I don't know if I have the right... I think I need... no, I need to generate hyperrandom for that. And I need... Might take a few generations to find one. I don't know what the solution is, though, to the laming problem, because you do want to be able to place farms without having... You could just require people to chop the stragglers before placing farms, I guess. Or have a new attribute set Gaia undeletable. No, the leaves terrain is not a forest terrain. If we had a blank forest terrain that just was like leaves, but it was forest, and say forest on the minimap too, then you could fill it with whatever stragglers you wanted, and that would, they would actually be real forest trees. But that does not work. That doesn't work with leaves. Like here, I filled the baobab forest with dragon trees, oak trees, and acacia trees, and all of those trees will count as forest trees. That's another cool trick to know. Anything else to ask or talk about? I mean, at some point, I'm just going to call it a night because it is late, and I've been talking for a few hours now. It is. To do that, I'm going to pull up. Well, alright, what I wanted to pull up here actually is uplift. There we go. So it is possible to do what you're asking. Let me just find the relevant script. See if I have it open somewhere. Just a second. I'll need a new window for that. I mean, basically, with a new attribute that enable balanced spacing, you can do it quite well. Just give me a moment to find said script. That should be there. I have a shortcut on my desktop to the mods folder. Local. Yeah. So we need something like that. Then we need notepad visible. You want a few small humps everywhere, so watch this. We have our elevation here where I'm specifically not doing I mean, that's pretty much what you want. You'd have to reduce the number of tiles slightly to get probably the effect that you're looking for, but they are scattered everywhere. So basically, enable balanced elevation along with a very large number of clumps will get you the effect you want. Now you're really asking minimum distance between hills. That's a feature request. You can't do anything about that. You could place like a bazillion lands, and then with different terrains, and place hills specifically on terrains or something like that. Yeah, exactly. You can do stuff with with lands. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, given that we can basically do unlimited amounts of lands, you could just have 120 lands in each direction that are one tile each or something. Not quite that extreme, but almost that extreme. And then have each land be, have a base size of something, but a land percent of 0. Or you could have them all different zones. That's possible as well. Let me get rid of this again. There we go. Hide that. Oh, Marathon, I see that you asked if any of the maps are suitable for Willow Kingdoms. Or do they all need DE? I think most of the maps that we went over today will need DE. Certainly any of them that use the new terrains. Or any new objects. Some of them, like Al-Kharid, just comes to mind. Some of the simpler maps might work. Might not actually be using any DE stuff. You'd have to check, but this looks pretty non-DE to me. There should be at least a couple of them that wouldn't need DE. Some of these, of course, the terrain masking, but that will just, it will fail, but it won't necessarily break the script. Not necessarily, you'd have to check, it might break the script. Like this would probably work without DE. Yeah. That just requires African kingdoms. No, I mean Rise of the Rajas. It's very small. Well, you have to figure out why. So... you're generating it as a land? Actually, I can check. Well, yeah. I have all these maps downloaded. As a land. I'm still gonna open it up. Boy, where is it? Resources common, random map scripts. Alright. Let's pull that up. So what are we working with? Player lands, land is water. Alright. Are you creating any other lands nearby that might have their origin in the middle of this land? So what you could do is you could specify a land position for this. And then for any other land that's in the area, specify a position that isn't in 44, 44, 44, 44. So you're relying though on them being randomly placed in certain positions, so that makes it a bit tricky. You can also use, I mean, things like this can also be randomized, like something. This is also possible. The issue, so the issue why it's probably being small sometimes is because some other land is being generated and its origin is right there. I suspect it's something along those lines. So you'd want to keep... Actually, we may be able to fix this differently too. If this land has a zone, you know, you say zone 1, and then we say other zone avoidance distance, whatever, something like that, and you were to duplicate that on all of your lands, you might end up with a desert around your lake though, so that you'd have to do a bit of testing, but there are certainly options to deal with this. Basically, you don't want another land having its origin in your lake. This is probably going to put a desert in the middle. Not quite what we're going for here. Also, they might be avoiding each other at this point. Yeah. I mean, it also looks cool, but that's not quite what we're going for. You might just have to define land positions for them. Or we can also try something. Let's try to get a particularly bad lake. And what we're going to do is instead of placing it at first, let's place it last. See if that helps. Yeah, the lake was nice, of course. That is less helpful than I had hoped. Alright. Put that back where I stole it from. If we remove all of the grass, we should get perfect lands always, right? So yeah, random map scripting is a lot of time in the scenario editor. You are not actually designing the map in the scenario editor, but you're testing it while you design it in a text editor. So here it looks much more regular. Okay, there is one more thing you can do too. You can set the border fuzziness to, I believe 100 is the value. That makes it completely unfuzzy, where you have a perfect lake there. I don't know if, but of course if the other lands interfere, it still won't be guaranteed to look like that. So. Something like that, maybe. Take a look at that. Well, you still have, yeah. It's other lands intruding on this lake. Well, I think they're also being used, one, to keep elevation away, and to make the area green. Well, you could have a couple random pieces of grass that randomize on each side of the lake, rather than randomizing across the whole swath of the area. There might be something you could do, I'm just not sure what it is right now. Well, there's another thing you could try. You can boost the base size on this. It'll make it squarish, but it also guarantees it will never be too squished. Alright, that might be too big. Something like that guarantees that the lake always has at least a minimum square size. That might be your best bet. Like that's pretty good, I'd say. It doesn't even look like a square. Yep, there you go. Do that. We don't need this anymore. Cool. And we've already fixed the map. I wonder, probably we can organize something where we can all, if anyone wants to update their maps, they can send it in. It's gonna have to be sent in to TOS because he did the map packs. But you could probably give him an updated version and he'd put it in. If you want to. Or you can always upload it yourself as well as a mod. That is some unfair wood generation right there. It's a personal wood line. But not that I mind. Alright. I think I'm probably gonna call it a night. It's been nice having you all on stream. And it was amazing to actually have this contest, see the maps played, look at them all. Good stuff. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for hanging out here so long. And if you want, there is a prize pool you could donate to. You could sign up and play against ACCM. I'm not going to. I only recently reached 1,000 elo. Alright, let me grab an overlay. Aha, there we go. I mean, sure. We're still missing signups, like plenty. So, I'm sure anyone who signs up is welcome. Alright, I am actually going to call it because it is kind of late. Thanks for stopping by, and have a good night.